Marijuana increasingly legal throughout the country. I believe 16 states at this point. New Mexico followed New York. Very excited about the New York legalization front. Tucker had to have his favorite science guest, who's been dubbed the pandemic's wrongest man because he has been wrong every step of the way about the science behind COVID. People forget, though, before he was habitually wrong about COVID on cable news for right-wingers' pleasure, he was a marijuana fearmonger. And he went back to his roots on Tucker's second program yesterday.
Community will acknowledge that cannabis can cause a fair number of people, especially if you use heavily, to have kind of short-term psychotic reactions, right? A bad trip.
But they're peaceful, though, because marijuana makes you peaceful.
Yeah.
It's the Mahatma Gandhi drug.
That's right. That's right. That's why violence has gone down so much in the United States in the last 5 years.
So you think that there is, I mean, I'm just being completely honest. I grew up in Southern California.
Pause it. So Tucker says marijuana makes you peaceful. Then Berenson just casually throws out, oh, well, more, as if more people are using marijuana. I don't have the statistics, but he's casually linking the fact that there has been a lack of peace in the country to marijuana use.
First of all, there hasn't been apart from major protests and things like that, the crime rate overall is down and is on a downward trajectory.
Violent crime has been
going down.
Yeah,
right. That's
years.
What I mean.
Yes, exactly. It's been going down for decades. Continue though. I just had to point that out.
In the United States in the last 5 years.
So you think that there is, I mean, I'm just being completely honest. I grew up in Southern California. I smoked marijuana as a child. Everyone I knew believed that it mellowed you out. So you're saying there's evidence of the opposite.
Oh yeah, so this is
also just pause it again. The everyone believed it mellowed you out is again contrary to the history of mainstream media messaging in this country on marijuana, which is that it makes you scary and dangerous, particularly if you're black, right?
Reefer madness.
Exactly.
Reefer madness. but for nice white kids in Southern California like Tucker, that wasn't the reaction that his body would have.
So you're saying there's evidence of the opposite.
Oh yeah, there's something called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. Okay, what that basically means is uncontrolled vomiting as a result of THC use.
Yes, I've seen.
Now, cannabis is supposed to settle your stomach. If you're nauseated, smoke some, right? That was sort of one of the famous uses.
Way more people than vomit.
For chemo patients.
The best hangover cure ever.
But it looks like there's this paradoxical effect if you use too much of it, that for whatever reason somehow it resets the receptors in the brain for some people, and they have this just terrible uncontrolled vomiting that in some cases can actually kill. I'm not exaggerating, because you become so dehydrated it can kill you if you're not careful, if you don't get to an emergency.
Drinking too much water can kill you.
So paradoxically, so in the short term, marijuana can reduce anxiety, certainly, and it can get you high. But like most anti-anxiety drugs, you can have bad rebound anxiety if you try to quit. I mean, that's true of benzodiazepines too. That's a known risk. Okay.
Yes.
Further,
it's
cannabis
now.
has this effect on people where it makes them paranoid. Some people, some of the time. Okay. And if you have this predisposition, or if you're sliding into mental illness and you start smoking a lot, you may sort of temporarily muffle that anxiety at the cost of your paranoid symptoms getting worse.
That part is, there's so much to dissect there.
You know what's amazing? That's the first thought coming to my mind here at the end here while Tucker heralds this. This is a guy who just a couple of weeks ago was talking about how he went searching for QAnon and just could not find it anywhere. There's no such thing as QAnon to him. There's no website. There's nothing. There's no proof to him that there's QAnon. Probably one of the biggest affliction facing the Republican base, if you want to talk about spiraling off into paranoia and mental illness. We're talking about no drugs necessary, no consumption of anything but what they're reading off their computer necessary to make people so delusional that they think that there is a global child trafficking scheme run by satanic cannibals, excuse me, who are in Hollywood, who are in the Democratic Party, everywhere, obviously, but Trump and all of Trump's friends, obviously. They're defending Matt Gaetz, the QAnon people, by the way. You know, that's just astounding to me that, you know, Tucker's sitting here eating this all up, but an actual example of affliction of that very thing to the people who watch his program just didn't exist.
Berenson,
I just want to say, like, the important thing to know about propaganda is that it's not about facts, but it's about attitudes you can muster those facts to create. So this is just like the vax stuff. So you focus on these extremely rare bad cases of things that happen to a very small number of people, but you don't contextualize the rarity. So it creates an attitude of fear and skepticism about something. It's the exact same playbook they're taking about vaccines, and it's despicable. Like, this is absolutely despicable to be absolutely creating fear out of and it's not a lie by like just misstating facts. This is lie by emphasis or lie by omission.
Yes.
Right. And that's how they operate. Like, it's not often they just create things out of whole cloth. It's just what you choose to emphasize at any given point. Like, so Tucker, are you going to choose to emphasize like gypsies coming into the country, for instance, right? Like, and Tucker chooses to emphasize everything that's helpful for a fascist agenda in this country.
Oh, well, I mean, okay. Also, I just want to point out, he's just doing, we mentioned Reefer Madness earlier in the clip. Berenson's just doing a new flavor of that. I mean, he connected it to people experiencing mental health struggles and psychosis. I mean, that's just Reefer Madness 2.0. So they're repurposing the same anxieties that are latent in the ancient audience of Fox News viewers from decades past, and that has continued in strains of thought, and making it a little bit more updating that model. And as Matt pointed out in the clip, can you point to an instance where someone smoked so much pot that they vomited and died from dehydration? There's so many cans and ifs and suppositions or whatever it is, like that. None of that ever happened. If Berenson found an actual concrete instance of that happening, you know, he would cite it on that show.
Right. Well, he rarely is able to cite anything, because I can't remember the last time he said something that ended up being truth. I mean, this guy, I get how he gets on Fox News, but it's amazing how this guy has built this name for himself, just being a contrarian on like, not just like issues where you can have a difference of opinion on. Like, this guy has made a name for himself on constantly being wrong on issues where there's actually like scientific data to back up the complete opposite of what he says. Like, this guy has literally built a name off of being wrong.
But notice it's never
to watch.
He's never wrong in a way that is like pro-worker. It's always wrong in a way that's pro-capitalist. All these issues.
Well, there's no money in siding with the scientific consensus. The money is when you can put out an alternative narrative that feeds into what conservatives want, and then they'll buy your book.
Who's this weed thing even for, honestly? Like, at this point, seriously, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, the Fox News audience doesn't need to be sold this, though. Like, why are they wasting time on this? Like,
yeah, but
there's vaccines they could talk about where they could win over new people. They got a whole range of different issues that are going to that could win over the crowd.
No, it's not just the viewers though. Like, the people who need an argument against weed right now are all the governments that want to slow roll it and monopolize it. So like, we're going to add and thank God Cuomo, but Cuomo was the perfect example of this. There was this much better weed legalization bill that could have been done, and Cuomo's like, you know what? We need to be careful and prudent about this. We need to make sure that we can trust all these suppliers and all this or that and the other, right? Like, Bingo. That's what it's for.
Well, I mean, and luckily the New York law is not even as bad as what we've seen in other states where, like, for example, in Florida, they've allowed these cannabis companies that already have all of the capital to just basically buy up all of the available dispensaries. In New York, they're going to leave essentially half of it for smaller growers, but
Right, but in the rest of the country, that's the dynamic. It's like Montana, for instance, there's no home grow, and like only like 5 major companies are licensed to sell, and like that's all done in the name of public safety. So that's who Berenson works for. That's who's really paying his bills now.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just because he's serving capital, and that's where that capital is going to allocate.
Right.
Once
legalization
rolls out.
That's a great point, Matt, because I was viewing it in the way where it was like, who are they? Like, yeah, their old audience, and I guess cops are the only people who are like staunchly anti-marijuana. Like, you're not going to get young people to agree with you on this, because guess what? A majority of them have tried it, and they know that you're lying from firsthand experience. So I mean, this is like one of those most like obvious in your face issues that the hands of time will show that they're on the losing position. There's no doubt in my mind that, give or take a few years, this is going to be something where it's legalized all over the country. But what you're bringing up, Matt, is a great point, because obviously they feel like there's still areas. But here's a question though: will young people fall for that bullshit too? Though, like, those laws can't be on the books for that long. The fact that there needs to be these upright corporations, these 5 corporations in Montana who could only do this, like, no way that lasts.
It'll be too late.
No, like Montana, they legalized it through like a ballot initiative, and then the Republicans just got to write the law. And so it's like, people are upset about it, but what can they do about it? Like, okay, take over the state party or state government of Montana, but how long is that going to take?